Welcome to the Aviator Zone Podcast. Aviator Zone Podcast. With your host, Captain Felipe Santiago. Flying stories, career advice, and a lot of hangar talk. Let's talk aviation.
Hi, and welcome back to the Aviator Zone Podcast. Today we have Colonel Dennis Daley, who is a retired Air Force F16 instructor pilot with over 1,000 sorties and combat sorties. Also retired Delta pilot, flying the 777 all over the world. Colonel, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So today I want to kind of give an overview of his career, how you got started into flying. So please tell me what got you into aviation, how did it all start, and how did it all end? Tell me about it.
Well, Felipe, first of all, I really appreciate being able to be here. You know, I'm getting older now, so it's nice to pass on stories. It's nice to have a podcast where people may listen to them or not, but it's nice to be able to tell stories at least. But, you know, I grew up on a farm in Illinois. So my parents were farmers, and we didn't have a lot of money, but there was a little grass airstrip pretty close to where we lived. And my father had friends that were farmers. One of them had an airplane. And so, you know.
What airplane was it?
A 150.
Okay.
An old 150. And I don't even know if he had a license or not anymore, you know, but it was a grass strip. There's nobody out there. It was pretty unregulated. But I used to watch Sky King, you know, and I'd watch, you know, back in the day. And by the way, I'm older than you may think. So, but, you know, I had a real interest in flying. My dad knew that. We didn't have a lot of money, but he's very supportive. So, you know, that gets back into parents supporting what their kids have interest in, of course.
Super important.
But super important. And so he got me rides with Jerry. And Jerry McDermott was this guy. We'd fly around at 500 feet. We'd go look at his cows and fly around and stuff.
So you use a 150 for inspection. Obviously, no crop dusting in a 150.
He'd go look at his fields. He'd go look at the cows. He'd fly around, look at buildings. He'd look at anything, you know, just go flying. And he'd take me with him. And then my dad got me some lessons with a guy named Jim Baird. And Jim Baird was an ex-World War II Air Force pilot that was an instructor. And that was in a 172. And he got me a few lessons. And I sold it on my 16th birthday.
Nice.
So on my 16th birthday, my dad took me down to Canton, Illinois, and I got my driver's license at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Then we went out, and then my instructor then was Ed Reinholz. And Ed took me out for a couple touch-and-go warm-ups, and he says, I think you're on your own now.
Off you
and
go.
He and my dad stood over in the grass while I did some touch-and-goes. And so it was a pretty big day.
So 16 years old, you had your license, and then you went solo, or you got your license.
I got my driver's license, and then I soloed like 2 hours later.
2 hours later.
And then, so then, you know, my parents, my mom and dad were both really instrumental in this. And I had another instructor, and her name was Ethel Scheffler. And Ethel was a World War II WAF who delivered airplanes all over the United States. She delivered fighters, she delivered bombers, she flew everything.
Wow.
And so she had all this experience and stuff, and she was just a great instructor. You know, she had all the qualities that would make you calm and help you and encourage you and stuff. But her and my dad came up with this idea that the only way I'm really going to get some experience is to take a long cross country. And I've got about 35 hours. And so I'm 17 years old. I've got 35 hours and
What was the requirement back then? Was it 40 hours? It was less?
No, it was hardly anything. You know, you'd go take the test.
Take the test.
I didn't have my private yet. I just soloed.
Right.
So I'm still waiting to get my private. But they go, the only way you're going to get confidence, the only way you're going to learn, and learn about how to get ready for the written test and all this other stuff is to go do this. So we had friends at Marathon in the Keys. And now we're up here in the middle of Illinois. And it's a long flight in the summer with the haze and the thunderstorms and everything else. But we took the charts and we did the planning and we draw the lines.
Tape them together.
Drew the lines. So I had a grocery bag full of charts and little flight plans on them, you know, and everything. And it was all VFR. And back then in the 150, we had one radio and we had one VOR, and that was it.
Wow.
And so there was no GPS.
A lot of pilotage and dead reckoning.
Oh, yeah. No, just go fly. So Ethel and my dad, you know, kind of got this all set up. My mom was having a heart attack over it, you can imagine. And I took off and I flew the first leg down someplace in Kentucky, and the VOR didn't work. So, you know, this is a long trip, and the VOR already doesn't work. And so I landed and I called Ethel. And I said, Ethel, the VOR doesn't work.
So they sent you by yourself?
Yeah, solo. Solo trip, 17 years old.
I thought they were going to put you with an instructor.
No, it's just like, you're going to learn how to fly or you're not going to make it.
Or you either come back or you don't come back.
Yeah, we're just going to throw you out here and go. And And so I called her and I said, the VOR doesn't work. And she goes, well, you still got your maps, right? And I go, yeah. And she goes, well, just get going. You'll be fine. And so it was map reading from Kentucky all the way through probably like 5 control zones I didn't know was there, all the way down through to Marathon in the Keys.
Had you ever talked on the radio before?
Oh yeah, a little bit, but
Were you flying out of controlled airport, or was it uncontrolled? Like
some of it was controlled. Galesburg was controlled field, so I talked to towers.
So you had a little bit of experience with the radio.
Not much. There's another story about that. It goes badly too. But so it's like I trundle along, and it's like map reading, and you're like looking at railroad tracks and water towers and all the stuff, interstates and all the things you do.
I heard they used to put the name of the cities on the water towers, so the pilots knew where they were.
You could almost see it too if you're low enough. But just flying the courses, just having faith in the system. And flying the track and, doing timing and, looking at your watch and going, okay, well, that's about right. And then there'll be a town loom out of the haze, and there it is, and that's probably the right place. And so, I did this for like 3 days.
Wow.
And a couple legs a day. And once in one little airport, I slept on the couch because there's no taxis back then or Uber or anything.
How did you call back to your instructor and like position reports and all that stuff? Because
None
there was
of
no
that.
FIDO
None
where
of
to
that.
look and see,
No, none of
he's
that.
pointing in the right direction.
Payphone you used to have credit cards back then for payphones. And so I'd go to the payphone, I'd call them, let them know I'm here. And that was it. That's all they cared about. And I got to one place, and there's the airport's out in the country, and the guy was really nice. The FBO was really nice. He says, look, you can sleep on the couch there tonight. And there's a shower in the hangar. You can use that shower. And so it was, a great night's sleep. And he brought me an egg sandwich next morning. And then off we go again. But, and then the people I stayed with in Marathon, he was a World War II pilot, but he was a Korean War F-86 pilot. And he'd flown the F-86 a lot. And so he was like very inspirational. And he sat down and talked to me for a day or two. We did a little fishing. And he talked to me. He says, look, you did really good getting here. Just keep it up. A little pep talk. I kind of needed a pep talk to get back in the airplane, And so I go, okay, good. And so did the same thing going home. Pulled out some more maps, followed the roads, bought fuel. And tremendous turning point in my flying career because I doubled my flying time almost in that trip.
Right.
But I had so much awareness now.
Well, I mean, the lessons that you learn on that trip,
Insane. But the confidence building I got day in and day out over each sortie, each trip was just really, really big.
That was a real cross country, right? You were really crossing the country.
And I learned so much about it. I learned so much about just, you as you get more comfortable, you see more. And this is like anything else we do flying, right? Mm-hmm. The more comfortable you get in the airplane, the more you see. And so one of the things that came out of that then I became a CFI when I was in college. I went to college at Southern Illinois University. And so I was in the aviation program there. I got my A&P mechanics rating, power plant mechanic rating. And then I finished up the rest of my ratings there. And I was under an Air Force contract to be a pilot.
So you finished, so the story, you got your pilot's license, assuming after you came back from that trip. And that was just a private pilot?
Yeah, knocked out the private pilot.
Off to college.
Got an Air Force scholarship. But the big thing is I got my CFI later on in school, and I taught, as a CFI like many of your guys are doing here.
Right.
And I really admire the CFI role. I really, really think it's a great, fundamental, important thing that everybody has to do at some point in their life. They have to teach. They have to learn how to teach.
Right.
And learn how to see if people are learning. But one of the things I did at the school was a 141 school. And, I'd learned so much in this stupid cross country that I did years ago that, I asked the director of the program, I said, look, can I take my student and go out to this airfield and land and get a Coke and then come back? Can we have like a 3-hour block? And he goes, sure. He says, I like it. So he let me do that. So I started doing that with my students. And my students started doing so much better than all the other students. They progressed so much faster. Because we'd go out and we'd do some air work on the way out, but the student had to find the airfield. He had to talk on the radio, he had to set the pattern up, he had to worry about the winds, he had to do all this stuff. And then we'd go to the Coke machine there after we land, we'd get a Coke, and we'd talk about it.
Debrief.
And then he'd have to do it all over again. Take off, do the flows, go do it again. Well, that second trip, you learned so much more on that second leg. And so my students progressed quite quickly, and so they started doing that then. They developed more out bases and started doing more short leg cross-country type work.
Yeah, that whole, I mean, that's basically what we do for a living, right? We go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And that whole entry and setting that up and visualizing it in your brain. I was very lucky when I was growing up. I was flying a lot with older guys that had their airplanes. I mean, back when we used to really fly a lot for the $200 hamburger or the $100 hamburger. And they would all come into the flight school and be like, hey, I'm going to go grab some lunch. You want to come along? Of course. So I was flying a lot of different airplanes and also getting that experience of going to a lot of different airports.
Exactly.
Different entries, different patterns, different towers. We all speak the same language, but that exposure, and you come back and you got weather on the way back and how to navigate around and make those decisions. You learn significantly more when you do cross country.
Yeah. So I think that was a big deal, teaching. And then the other thing that I thought was really fundamental about teaching, and you guys have a tremendous CFI business here, and Juan and I have talked a lot about your students and stuff, but having a really, really good understanding of the systems in the airplane, no matter what type of airplane it is. If it's a primary airplane and you're starting out and it's a 152 or whatever you're flying, Diamond or whatever it would be, but understanding simple things like the electrical system a little bit. So if I lose an alternator, if I have the alternator light come on, oh, look, maybe I can turn the pitot heat off and look at my battery and go, oh, okay, I'm fine. I got enough battery power to talk on the radios and land.
Yeah.
So that simple
system knowledge
to start with.
Well, it takes a lot of the stress of, oh my God, okay, is this a really big deal or is this not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Immediately, system knowledge allows you to be like, not a big deal.
How do I cope?
Yeah, I
how am I
just
gonna
continue
cope
to an airport, I'll be fine,
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference. So talk to me about college. You became a CFI, and then after college, the Air Force had your name written down, and it was...
Well, yeah, I had a 4-year scholarship.
What made you choose the Air Force? What?
We didn't have enough money to go to college.
Okay.
So my parents had enough money to probably get me through the first year. We had applied for the scholarship, and back then, it's like it was a very simple process. It wasn't like it is now. You filled out 2 pieces of paper and mailed it off, and so I got put on the wait list in September of that year as I started college for a 4-year scholarship, and my mom wrote a letter to our congressman. And this is where I think that everybody needs to be aware of how much your congressman can help you sometimes, because she wrote just a nice letter that said, my son's doing this, and he's on the wait list right now with the Air Force, and I just wanted to see if you could reach out and see how he's going to do, And
you listened.
Yeah, and so in October, they offered me a scholarship.
Wow.
And so I took that, of course, and that gave me 4 years of school, and I did my aeronautical science degree, did a business degree after that, and then later on, then I finished my MBA and Master's of Aeronautical Science both.
Wow.
So, but, long story short, I was able to get my ratings, get my ANP, get some experience. And my roommate at the time was a pilot. And so he and I bought a Cherokee 140. And we bought it from our power plant instructor because he owned it and it was run out. The motor was run out. But he says, look, if you guys buy this from me, and he liked us, he goes, if you buy this from me, I'll help you rebuild the engine. That'll be your practical for your sign-off.
Perfect.
And we got all our parts at discount through the aeronautical school. And so we rebuild this airplane, and rebuild the engine and stuff. It's a pretty ratty looking airplane. But we didn't pay much for it, of course. But we take it out, we push it out when it's done. And we start it, and like
That's
half
gonna
the
be
school,
such a
half the school was
satisfying
watching.
Is it going to blow up or is it going to start? One
Half
of the
the
two.
school was watching to see, because we got to break it in. Let's just see if it starts first, And it ran, and we'd replace the accessories and stuff, and so it was pretty cool. And so we bought a transponder, overhauled the engine, and flew it for 600 hours.
Wow.
And so, through college then, he and I would fly people back and forth to Chicago and just split gas and stuff.
Back when avgas was...
gas was cheap, and we'd split gas with kids, and to get them home to see their parents, and But overall, it allowed me to build a lot of just interesting time. Yeah. So...
And then the Air Force. So you finished your school, and then you went into the Air Force. Did you know that you were going to be flying? How does that...
Yeah, it was still a little tight back then, but I knew I had a flying position. So that was a big deal. And, I had some trepidation about it because all my friends were going to United at the time, and I was in the Alpha Eta Rho fraternity. And so they were very instrumental in getting kids into United. And but, I was destined to go in the Air Force. I go, okay, fine, smartly go in the Air Force. And I loved every minute of it. So I get in there, and you're around some really, really inspirational people. The flight program's very, very good. I mean, head and shoulders above anything I'd really done previous to that, in structure and measurement and professionalism and everything you could even think about. And then we're flying the T-37, T-38s and stuff like that, so that's always fun. But I went to flight school and got done with that. Went to electronic warfare school, which is kind of a different animal, but that enabled me to do some other things then as I moved on in my Air Force career. So, long story short, I had a very strong start in aviation. I had good fundamentals starting with my dad, really, and my instructor kicking me out the door to go fly across country. And then I had a really strong background from the university at Southern Illinois University.
So you knew, so it's a little different now, no? For somebody that wants to be a pilot in the Air Force, they don't really know that they're going to be in a flying position until pretty much at the end of that contract.
I think they do. I think the Air Force is still signing people up to be a pilot. They'll still put them on scholarship. University of Miami is one of the great resources right here. But I think they'll tell them you're going to be this or this. It's a contract. And so at the end of it, you still get to go to flight school if your grades are good and you graduate and your physical abilities are still okay.
So you have to meet those standards and then they put you into flight school.
And the standards aren't hard. It's a great deal. For somebody who wants to go fly, flying military aircraft is fun because you're going to fly all over the world. You're going to fly different things. You're going to do different things. You're going to be around really cool people.
Where did you go to school for the military? So when you went to your initial, that's T-37, T-38?
Yeah.
What was that school?
Columbus. I went to Columbus, Mississippi.
So how was that going already? You had a couple of thousand hours already, right? The majority of the students
going
in there.
I didn't have that much. I had about 800 hours, give or take.
800 hours. Still pretty significant
yeah.
amount of hours for somebody compared to the majority of the students that are coming with nothing.
Yeah, the quickest way to have a problem
is have flight hours.
Is to have flight hours. Is to think you know something when you don't. And they want you to do it their way and their cadence and with their checklists and there's no saying, well, and probably this applies everywhere. No matter what you've done in the past, if you're sitting with an instructor and you're working together and you say, well, over here we used to do it like this.
You're on the wrong foot.
Yeah, it's the wrong. So anytime you start to say that phrase, that's just my 2 cents, stop it.
Yeah, even on an airline training, like you hear the number one thing instructors complain about is, but I used to do it this way in my other airline. Well, you're not at your other airline anymore.
Yeah, that's not what we want. So that was a kiss of death. But it also, though, gave me great situational awareness at different times. So, I had a really high score for my pilot training class. And, but anyway, so, long story short, it was a great time.
You finish your T-38 school, and then from there you get assigned the aircraft that you're going to be flying for the Air Force, or they were assigned that already before?
They assigned that. I went to Germany and flew the F4, and I was a backseater in the F4. So I was assigned to the back seat, flew there. For 2.5 years, came back here to Homestead, and then never left Homestead. So I was on active duty all the way through 1986, and then went to the reserve unit there, and then we transitioned in the reserve unit to F-16s. I was lucky enough to get an F-16 transition as well.
So you go through training all over again now to fly this airplane.
Yeah.
Going from the F4 to the 16, how was that transition?
Great leap, great quantum leap. Really nice time, and. The F4 was just a really cool airplane. It weighs 60,000 pounds, and it's got 2 huge, massive engines that produce a lot of thrust, and it makes a lot of noise, and it burns a lot of fuel. And it goes really fast. But that's about it, And it did its thing, and in the time it was called on to do that. So, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was a great airplane for the military. And then the F-16 is a quantum leap again. It's a generational change in fighters.
Right.
So just like, the F-22 is a quantum leap above the F-16, it was a big deal. And it's a fun airplane to fly. I can promise you that.
I mean, you have your resume, over 1,000 sorties.
Yeah.
Is that because of instructing? I mean, that's pretty high for an average Air Force pilot.
It's over, the F-16 sorties were over 12 years.
Okay.
And we would fly, 12 we would try to fly, 8 to 12 sorties a month to stay proficient. And, some of them were instructional sorties where you're checking somebody out, and some of them are just training sorties where you're on the wing flying as well. So you had to be a good wingman as well as be an instructor. But I was also full-time in the reserve unit at Homestead. So I was in the 93rd Fighter Squadron there, the Makos. And so, I went through the whole process there to become an instructor. But only at certain times were you really teaching. Most of the time you're learning too.
Right.
Because you're flying with some of the most professional guys you've ever seen, some of the most experienced guys you've ever met. And a lot of them are fighter weapons school graduates, very, very experienced, and it's just a great place to learn. So, I spent probably 80% of my time learning. And then because I was full-time in the squadron, I needed to keep a instructor rating to be fully qualified there, so that worked out well too. But, overall, it's like the F-16 is just a fabulous airplane.
What was I mean, I can imagine your first time soloing, right? Nobody forgets their first time soloing, but how about when you solo one of these jets? Like, how was the first time flying by yourself in that airplane?
It was pretty neat. You're just hoping none of the lights come on because you really don't understand how the flight control system works or anything else really. And there's all kinds of little drills you do ahead of time, little system checks you do before you fly. But you're just hoping, that none of the lights come on, everything goes just kind of normal, And so it did. I was out in Tucson for that training, and it worked out fine. I got to solo, and we all went out and had a party that night afterwards and stuff. But it's pretty cool.
Talking about systems knowledge with these airplanes, right? Because obviously there's a secret part, and you guys have clearance as well, but do they really teach you everything about that airplane, or there's some stuff in that airplane that not even the pilots really know about because of...
They teach you everything. I mean, you fundamentally learn it as fast as you can learn it. It takes years to really understand
how the whole system
works. So,
I also heard they take a while, too, to power up, so it's not like something you can just go jump in and power it on.
Well, it kind of works both ways. We can set the airplane up for a scramble and go out and be gone in 3 minutes, which is pretty cool. Throw the jet fuel starter on the battery and throw the throttle up and off you go. Or most of the time we would sit and we would align all the systems and check all the systems, go through a whole series of checks and everything.
Well, aligning, what can you define a little bit?
Well, and we have inertial navigation systems.
So you have to wait for the RSs to align?
We have to wait for the RSs to come up. You have to wait for, the GPS tie-in now to make sure everything's good. So it just took a while.
So you'd be able to fight, but you wouldn't have like a GPS position or...
Well, again, it's like there's kind of two ways. We can go now if we want to, but we set the airplane up with a rough alignment. It's like a quick start alignment.
Right, got it.
So you can just jump in, turn the knobs on, and go. But that takes prior setup. Or you can, take 12, 15 minutes and spool everything up, check all the weapons, check everything you're supposed to check.
Yeah, the reason I asked, I was just watching this really good documentary of the two fighter pilots that came up, the first ones to come up when the 9/11 attack. Mm-hmm. And they were absolutely not ready for this at all. They were not even ready aircraft. They didn't have any weapons or anything. And they're talking about the same thing. It's like we're sitting there like, okay, well,
what are we going to do now?
There's nothing to really have on board, so let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also heard that the newer airplanes take even longer to, like the 35, they take a little bit longer because they got more technology and all that stuff to get in the air.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm an old man. It's a young man's game, and I don't know. But I think the big takeaway though from the F-16 or military flying is that you really have to master the systems. So you really have to learn the airplane, and this goes for any airplanes, the Airbus, whatever you're flying. You're a captain. It's up to you. You're responsible.
Right.
So learning the systems really well so you can make a good decision.
Yeah, and you see that a lot. I think the Airbus kind of doesn't teach much of that. And the new airplanes that we have nowadays don't really teach much of, okay, learn your systems. Yeah. If it's in the green, you're good. And if it doesn't ding, you're good. And a lot of pilots rely on that. But having that knowledge background really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think, Sully was flying the Airbus. When he ditched the airplane at the Hudson, which is a pretty cool movie, pretty cool experience for him, and is a lifesaver for a lot of people. But I think the big takeaway from that is that, he kind of deviated back to his personal knowledge of the airplane, did a few things that allowed him to save the airplane.
Yeah, made it a glider.
So, yeah, it's like, I think that no matter if you're starting out or if you're very experienced, whatever airplane it is you fly, you have to learn the flows, you have to learn the checklist, you have to read the emergency procedures and really understand them. And that teaches you the systems.
Yeah.
So
it definitely makes you a better pilot. You have combat missions too in your resume. Can you talk about those? Like, is there something you can?
Not a lot, one or two, but we did Operation Northern Watch and Southern Watch from Homestead quite a bit, and so I flew with Tom Carr, who's now passed away, but he and I flew a mission together. That was pretty fun. It was a lot of fun. That morning, a good story, because you kind of like go, well, we're all reservists. And that means that we have civilian jobs, like airline jobs, and then we fly, military missions. And you can end up over in Kuwait or in Turkey or someplace getting ready to fly over Iraq, and your whole life can change.
In no time.
And so a good story about that is that we were sitting down for breakfast like 3:30 in the morning, and I was sitting with Keith Beam, and Keith's just a great guy, probably one of the greatest fighter pilots in the world. And one of the younger guys comes over and sits down across from us, and we've got like these big, massive mounds of food, potatoes and the whole thing. And he's got a bowl of cereal. And he looks up at us, got a big grin on his face, and says, "Wow, you guys are really chow hounds this morning." And Keith's got a really dry delivery, and he just looks up at him and goes, "Well, you never know when you're going to eat again." And that kind of puts it all in perspective, You're sitting here with your Delta Airlines ID and $100 and a Gold American Express card in your pocket, just hoping I can get anywhere on the ground I need to, but that's not really how it's going to work. But no, it's like, then you go do the stuff you're trained for, and it was fun. It was a neat experience.
Can you talk a little bit about the mission, like what you guys did, or?
I don't even remember.
Wow.
I don't even remember that much of it now. So, but it was just fun, and it all worked out fine. And the 93rd deployed a lot of different times. They're still deploying to combat theaters. So, it's a great organization, great reserve unit.
I'll go back because you were also the squadron commander for Homestead Air Reserve Base, correct?
I was the mission support group commander, which is essentially the person in charge of all the facilities there. So I owned the runway, all the facilities, 158 buildings, 2,000 people, a $50 million budget, all the things that made the base run. It's like being the mayor of a small city. So then the operations guys, there was a colonel in charge of the operations side, and then there was a colonel in charge of maintenance. And they ran their own organizations, and the three of us then worked together to kind of run the base. And then when we worked for a wing commander.
Gotcha.
And he was a colonel or general. That kind of made us all work and play well together.
So I'm sure that taught you a lot, managing that much of a budget and keeping all these buildings going. And
it gave me institutional experience, and part of the things that helped me be a success at doing this, because I did it for 6 years, and in 6 years you can figure out if you're doing okay or not, was that I had a really, really strong super deputy who was a major, and he was just a rock star. And then I had an executive assistant that was a rock star, and so I had this team of people that helped me.
Great team.
Yeah, great team. So as I came out of the military and stuff and started doing things in the civilian world, I realized that I still need a team. I still need to assimilate people that can help me with the things that I want to do in life next. So that was a good lesson learned from there, is that the stronger the team is around you, the better off you're going to do. So
absolutely,
just like here at Aviator Zone, you guys have a phenomenal team.
Yeah, if I couldn't do my job without my team,
we wouldn't be sitting here without the guys here and without the organization that you guys have.
Absolutely.
So the team thing is a huge deal, no matter what aspect it is in life. You don't have to be on SEAL Team 6 to know about a team, so it could be anything. But, if you're in private business, having a really strong marketing guy, having a really strong connections for web design or electronic sales or whatever, internet sales, whatever it is, your team is your go-to people.
We have a saying in Spanish, tell me who you're with and I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it applies to that team. If your team is a strong, solid team, then, it's going to make me look very successful because they're going to do all their job, and it's going to allow me to be able to do my other parts of my job.
Yeah, very
right.
much
I couldn't be. I guess when we first started Aviator Zone, I was everything, right? But as we get bigger and bigger and bigger,
it's the team.
It's the team. Like I can't do it. I can't do it by myself. So it makes sense.
You can never watch 150 grade books.
No, you can't.
You can never oversee.
Teach 150 students.
20 people flying at a time out in the U.S.
Of course.
And but you guys' school is very impressive. You guys have a tremendous school.
Yeah, we work hard. 24 hours a day. It's kind of like a little base.
Yeah.
So. At the same time that you were in the military, so you did active duty for some point.
I did 10 years of active duty, went in the reserve unit, and stayed at Homestead my entire career almost the whole time.
So then at that point, when you finish your active duty time, you said, okay, now I'm going to go try the airlines?
Well, it's kind of like timing. I've got all this, this active duty time and so on, so I do want to stay associated with the military as best I can, but I'm coming up on 40 years old. Delta Airlines is hiring, American's hiring. I've got the qualifications, and I go, back then the retirement age was 60. So I said, I can work for 20 years. I can get 20 years in here with the airline.
Another retirement with the airlines.
So I go, I might as well try it. So I applied to Delta and American only. And Delta called me. I got an interview. A lot of friends in the squadron, a lot of different people helped me get ready for the interview. Learn how to say the right things and do the right things, act the right way. But tremendous company. I was so happy that I went there, And, Delta's still just a great, great place to work.
You were based in Atlanta?
I was based in Atlanta. I commuted from Miami the whole time.
So 20 years? You commuted 20 years? You went to...
So I did 25 years.
25.
But, commuting was easy because we could reserve the jump seat. So I could call ahead. I could make sure I had a flight up to Atlanta when I needed it. I flew domestically on the 737. Originally I was on the 727 as a flight engineer, so I got some systems knowledge. And
How was the 727? Everybody that flies that airplane just
the flight engineer type rating, the oral was 5 hours long, and that was normal, 4 to 5 hours. That was normal for a new engineer. You're on probation. Your whole career is ahead of you on how well you do on this ride. If you don't pass, you're done. And it was like everything. I mean, there's 3 engines, there's 3 electrical systems, there's 3 hydraulic systems, there's all the different things.
And there was no system logic back then.
And it was a mess.
You were the system logic.
Yeah, the airplane was a mess, and you're the plumber. You're the guy that had to fix everything and put everything together. And they would go, well, what if this light comes on? Oh, So it was the hardest thing that I'd really done to date. Was the 727 flight
harder
engineer.
Than the jets in the Air Force.
All of it.
Wow.
It was hard. And so we got past that. So skin of my teeth, I survived that. But then I went on and I flew the 737-200, first officer and captain. And I flew the 737 as a first officer. And what I was doing was I was protecting my seniority because I'm still flying in the reserves actively. And that's 10 to 12 days a month for sure. But then...
how does the airline work that schedule with you flying reserve and also...
We could bid trips pretty easily, it's just like Spirit. We could bid trips, pick and choose what we want, and then fit our reserve flying in. Or if I needed to have time off, I could do military drops. And I could do up to so many military drops over a period of time.
So does the Air Force allow you to kind of set up your schedule when you can fly, like the days that you can come in, or they give you say, hey, you have to come in these days?
Sometimes.
Okay.
And in all honesty, sometimes both companies would say, we need you here for training or we need you here for flying.
Right.
And so, it was a give and take, but it worked good. It was a great system. And it allowed me to continue. And your proficiency.
There's a lot of guys that do that.
A lot of guys. And it's a natural fit. And, as an airline guy, you understand that, you have Aviator Zone here, but you have, when you're not at the airline, you're not doing anything unless it's something productive and you want it to be. So being in the reserves was a very productive thing for me to do. It gave me a lot of security also, being with the airlines and being junior in case I would get furloughed or something. So it was nice safety net. And it was thoroughly enjoyable because, you'd see all kinds of people in operations up in Atlanta or JFK or wherever you're at, And so, but I always protected my seniority so that I could pick and choose. I could be home for Christmas, be home for the holidays. I had young son playing sports, so I could be home to watch those games as much as possible. And so I kind of guarded my lifestyle. And I put money kind of second, guarded my lifestyle. And I did that also when I went to the 777. I spent my last 15 years on the 777. And first officer the whole time. So, it's the best deal in the airlines. I mean, you're over here, and if there's a problem, you look over at the captain, you go, it's not my problem. But, and most of the time we
Sorry, Captain, got to go. My commute's coming.
Yeah. Well, most of the time you're dealing in the 777. You're really not dealing with airplane problems. You're dealing with people problems. And so it's great to look over at the captain.
A lot more people to deal with on that airplane, right?
Yeah.
More likely chance of somebody having an issue.
And we flew ultra long haul, which is 12 hours or greater flights. So, we'd come out of Atlanta or JFK, Minneapolis, wherever, but we would go to Tel Aviv, Johannesburg, South Africa, Beijing, Singapore.
How's the
Sydney.
routing going from Atlanta? Like, did you just point it direct?
Atlanta, Johannesburg. Draw a straight line down the middle of the ocean.
Direct, enter, and just send it? Like, is there airways that go out there? Like
some, but most of the time it's, there's a ton of airways that connect
and
everything.
It's all GPS navigation?
Yes.
I'm assuming. There's no...
Yeah. No, it's super tight GPS. And it was all data linked and everything. It was all very sophisticated. It was all very well scripted.
All data linked, no HF, not even HF?
We had HF.
So you had HF, but
we had to have HF and data link, both functional.
But I'm assuming there's periods that you don't have not even HF coverage. No?
Oh, yeah. No, you always had
do?
HF.
Oh, interesting.
And, and so we'd fly right down the middle of the Atlantic between, Africa and Brazil. And to get an idea of how big this area is, you'd look at it and go, Well, if you had a medical emergency come up at certain points, you were 4 or 5 hours
From the near
from a divert base. So, a lot of times if you had a medical emergency come up or something like that, the correct answer was, we're going to take you on to Johannesburg. But we'd always go through the dance, and most of the things we dealt with, abnormally were medical emergencies.
Wow.
So people would have all kinds of things happen to them when they've been in the airplane for a long time. And the Joburg flight was 14 hours long.
Any, diversion plans? Like, I'm assuming you have the dispatching on that has to be
Yeah, the dispatch is a science. And Delta the dispatchers there were just masterful. But yeah, it's a science, and you had different dispatch approved.
It's a 2-engine airplane, so ETOPS.
Yeah.
So 120 minutes from.
I think we were approved for 180.
180 minutes from an airport.
Yeah, and then there was all the different waivers they get and everything else. So, but
there's what's out there.
Well, you got the Canary Islands. You've got
far.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You've got I can't remember the name of the island that's off the coast of Africa. Ascension Island. It's not Ascension. I can't remember it. But
did you ever have to divert to any of these airports?
No.
Any mechanical issues like on?
In the 777 we had very few. Most of them were self-induced. It's stuff that you do that because you'd be looking at something or change something or not really understand what you're doing at the time. So most of the things that happened to us were either self-induced or really not an airplane problem. But most of the things that we actually dealt with on 777 were people management. It was we didn't have, thank God, as many physical altercations as it seems like that trend has come up now. But we had more medical things, and it was just due to the nature of the long flight, dehydration, people buying like Ambien in India or Korea.
Ambien?
Ambien is like a sleeping drug, sleeping pill. Super strong when you buy it overseas.
And they basically would pass out in flight.
Yeah, because people wanted to say, I just want to take something and sleep the whole way. Well, these
things
were super strong, so they'd take that. Then the hostess would come around with a glass of champagne, and they'd have a couple of glasses of champagne, a Korean Ambien or an Indian Ambien, and next thing you know, they're whacked out, and it's a mess. So, but we had all kinds of funny things happen. But overall, just dealing with people was probably the biggest thing. And
out of flying international, what was your favorite destination to go to?
That's hard. I liked a lot of them. I did Paris, Tel Aviv, Johannesburg were probably my top 3 choices.
What'd you do in Africa? Like, what'd you do out there when you went out? Like, did you do anything on your overnights? Like, what was it?
Because we had to be there on an ultra long haul when you're more than 14 hours, more than 12 hours. You had to have 48 hours. Delta required 48 hours on the ground.
That's a good overnight.
It's a great overnight. So we'd arrive around 5 in the afternoon, clear customs, go to the hotel, go out for dinner. Next day, do a workout, go sightseeing, whatever you want, dinner again. And it was just fun. It was like an eating and drinking club. But, and then everybody shows up the next day. You've had almost a full day of rest again. And then off you go. And, so it works out pretty good. Then on the really the long flights, the longer the flight, the longer the break. So you have 4 pilots. You have 2 captains, 2 first officers. And once you get to level off, the relief crew goes back to the crew rest. And on the 777, we had a beautiful crew rest facility. So you'd go up and you'd change into your T-shirt and sweatpants and hang up your uniform and go rack out for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, get some sleep, and then come back up and go back up on deck, and then it'd be time to eat.
How?
And then the other crew goes back, and the flight attendants would bring you a first class meal.
How often was your rotation? So was it every 4 hours or like?
It depended on the length of the overall flight. But anything greater than 12 hours was usually 2.5 to 3 hours at least minimum, and sometimes it was 3.5, 3:45.
And you would come up 2 or 3 times during that flight to do that.
Well, it just rotated twice.
Twice. Okay.
So the first crew would go back, 3:45 later they'd come back up, swap out, do it again, and then.
How did you guys pick the landing? Rock, paper, scissors?
No, sometimes it was by need, because some guys, we were trying to stay landing current, although it was virtually impossible, because if you look at 4 pilots in a cockpit and you only fly twice a month, so I'm getting 4 legs a month, and 4 guys in there, so the chance of me staying current 90 days, 3 landings, 3 takeoffs isn't going to happen.
Did you have to go to the sim all the time to do that?
I loved going to the sim.
Really?
And the reason was that we got paid
very well
amply for going to the sim. I could jump on a 6 o'clock flight here, fly to Atlanta, go to the sim for 2 hours, get more proficient. And actually, the more time you spend in the sim, the better you get at flying the sim. And that sounds kind of hokey a little bit, but there's a knack to that because you get to see more. That gives you more visual cues that might happen on the airplane. So the more time you spend doing engine cuts, and we'd practice all kinds of stuff there. We get our 3 landings and 3 takeoffs, and
You still had time. I'm
we
assuming
got
you had
Cat
time
3
to go
approaches,
do
got all the Cat 3 stuff done. But then we do engine cuts and all this stuff. Well, when it came time to go to recurrent, which
You're sharp.
you can just sit down and do recurrent, and you've practiced all your memory items and you've done all this stuff. So it made recurrent a super easy breeze. And also I felt maybe more proficient in the airplane. So when you're not flying very much, the simulator time became very valuable. So
You have over 14,000 hours?
yes.
And how many over 50 years of flying? Are we getting there yet?
Yeah, so we're there. I got 51 years.
So we have an award coming.
We do. So
Can you talk a little bit about
July
that?
3rd of 1972 is when I soloed. Or not July 3rd. That's when I had my first flight in my logbook. And then soloed on my birthday. But so the FAA has this award called the Master Pilot Award. And if you've been actively flying for more than 50 years, they have actually an award for that. So I just got notified actually yesterday that they're going to do a presentation probably in November for it.
Wow.
So, it's kind of neat. It's like I'm not real big on awards and stuff, But this one kind of touched me because
Yeah, it's 50 years.
if you've done something for 50 years and you're still here, and so you must be doing okay with it.
That's
So,
amazing. Congratulations on that. That's
Thank you. Yeah,
that's
it's
one
a
I
big
look
deal.
forward to. I'm like, okay, I got probably about 10 in or something like that.
You know what? It's like
40 more to go.
yeah, you know what? And I'll tell you what else I like is that I'm enjoying it more now, or as much now as I ever have in my life. So I feel blessed to be in good enough health where I can still fly. But I'm flying with people that we all know,
Yeah.
and I'm flying the Citation 650. I'm flying the Mustang by myself, and
Before we go to that flying, because what I like to talk about that flying. How was that last flight at Delta, setting that parking brake and just picking up your bags?
oh, it sucked because it was during COVID,
Okay.
and so there was no last flight. I took the early buyout because they'd grounded all the 777s. Basically there's no destinations to go to. So I took the early buyout, and it was anticlimactic. Although I did really like the buyout.
So, do you remember your last flight? Like, it was...
Well, kind of. What I did was, a friend of mine was flying one of the Frankfurt cargo runs in the 777. This is all during COVID. And so I called Manny and I said, look, Manny, I'd really like to go for one more flight. Can you put me on your jump seat to go to Frankfurt? Then I'll buy dinner. So he goes, absolutely. So I went up, jumped on the flight. We flew out of Chicago, Frankfurt, and got to sit in the seat, look around, watch the sunrise over the Atlantic one more time, which is really kind of breathtaking. There's a couple things you see when you're flying international a lot. One of them's the Northern Lights, because you're up in the tracks going across the Atlantic, and you see the Northern Lights a lot, which is pretty spectacular. And then you see the sunrise. And the sun, there's just something great about a sunrise in the morning.
It is.
So I dearly love that. And I got to see the sunrise one more time like that, and then had a great time with Manny and the rest of the crew in Frankfurt, and then turned around, came back, and came home, and I think my wife sold my uniforms in a garage sale.
Some kid's going to be wearing that thing for Halloween.
Yeah. So anyway, but it was good. It was fine.
So, retired from the airlines now, no longer in the Air Force, so you still keep yourself flying, which is awesome.
Yeah,
I plan on doing the same thing when I, ever retire. I just can never walk away.
Well, you know what? You got to keep doing stuff. I think if you feel like it and you feel like if you feel like you want to, I think you need to. So I was going to I was at a point where I was kind of going to walk away. And a good friend of mine, Robert Moses, has got a Citation 560, and so. He said, look, come and help me with my company. Come and do this, work for me here, and I'll get you checked out, and you can be the chief pilot or whatever in the 560. So whatever that was, whatever that meant to me at the time, I go, oh, okay. And he did. He got me checked out in the airplane. He helped me get started in it.
Jumping from the 777 to the Citation.
Yeah, the seat it's not an electric seat. It's hard to get into. It's really hot. The air conditioner doesn't work well. But other than that, it's kind of a cool flying airplane.
It's like a little sports car.
So I took my type ride with 2 hours and 10 minutes of instruction before my type ride, and it gives back to this thing where I hope none of the lights come on, because I really don't quite understand what's going on here yet. But I had to go through all the things like all your student pilots do. I had to get ForeFlight. I had to get flightplan.com. I had to get an iPad set up, learn how to use this stuff. So I went through all the growing pains.
Did you guys use what was your backup app at Delta?
We had the Delta app, and that was it.
So you didn't even use Flight Deck Pro, like?
No. We had the Delta app, the widget app, and it was phenomenal. I mean, Delta did a great job. Top of the line company, just like Spirit, but Delta did a great job designing the app. So that's all we had. At first we didn't even have iPads that were connected.
To Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we had just Wi-Fi only iPads, which kind of sucked because you had to load everything in the airport before you got on the airplane.
Right.
But things progressed rapidly. You got into data link. The flight plans would push with data link. Your iPads hooked up. It was pretty sweet. So
you miss CPDLC?
Oh yeah. No, you get a whole route loaded up too and everything. And then at first, when I first started flying the 777, we had to load everything by hand into the FMSs. And so in India, a Mumbai flight plan would take you, JFK Mumbai, it would take you 35 minutes of typing to load the flight plan.
Wow.
And then you had to check it.
And the probability of errors are very high when you're putting that many fixes, that many airways.
So one guy would type and one guy would verify. One guy would type and one guy would verify. And it took us 35 minutes sitting there to load a decent flight plan. And then you had to load the winds manually too. Oof. So it was the points, the winds, everything. And so, it was a process. But then later on, you could just push load, and there it is.
Just verify that everything checks.
Yeah, so progress is amazing, and technology is amazing.
Do you have something like that on the citation, or are you still...
On some of the citations, you can... they got Flight Connect, and Flight Connect works great. You can upload flight plans from your iPad or marry your iPad to the active flight.
We just got the FlightStream 510 for my friend's citation because I'm like, we're burning gas.
Yeah.
Loading a flight plan. We don't have an APU, right? So I'm like, we're burning gas trying to put this. The savings of the FlightStream is just
so you can keep your iPad synced, and it's just beautiful. But like the Mustang I'm flying, it's got an older G1000, so it's not eligible for FlightStream connectivity. But the technology is cool. It's like it makes our lives a lot easier and a lot safer.
How is it from, you mentioned you had great dispatchers at Delta to now you're everything, right?
I'm my favorite dispatcher.
You're a dispatcher, catering.
Well, you know what's funny is that I don't mind doing that stuff because I don't have a lot of other stuff that bothers me, that I'm bothered with to do. So, I've got the time to make the phone calls, to call the FBOs, to shop gas on CAA, to do all the different things we're going to do.
By the way, whoever's not, I don't know if it was you or I think you mentioned CAA, but the previous owner also mentioned CAA. If you have a private airplane,
CAA is a good deal.
You need to have CAA. I think on the first place we went to, we saved the entire membership and more.
Oh, yeah.
Just on gas.
No, I mean, we're talking $2 or $3 a gallon.
And fees, even on the fees, like parking and all that stuff. We just went to Teterboro the other day. I didn't know we had to have a reservation. I didn't know we had to have a reservation.
You should call.
I landed like, do you have a reservation? I'm like, yes, for dinner. I in 15 minutes. We got to go.
We got to go. No, I mean, here.
And the guy goes, no, here at this time of the year, you need a reservation here.
So you got the UN, you got the US Open, you got the UN in session.
There was a fashion show and everything. And I'm like,
Fashion Week.
I'm like, it's not going to happen.
Should probably call.
Yeah. But they let me in. And we're sneaking in the little citation through all these jets. Hello.
Yeah, for those that haven't been to Teterboro is the epicenter for corporate jet aviation. It is so impressive.
I'd never flown in there, obviously, right? Never did any of the little jet flying. Yeah. So coming in there and I was just looking with my peripherals, like we're coming in at night, so I'm not familiar with the airport, making sure that I'm not, missing anything. But with my peripheral vision, I just see stacks of jets, just head to tail, head to tail, head to tail.
Big jets.
And we're not talking about citations, we're talking about big boys.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I would have tried to make a reservation, they'd be like, no, we don't have space for this little guy. We need to make space for the global. So I'm kind of glad that I didn't make a reservation because I was just sneaked right in.
No, it's like it's a really cool. But like I came out of there the other night in the Mustang by myself, and we take off. It's like 8:00 at night, and you take off out of Teterboro, and they turned us south along the river. And you got the Hudson River and the whole skyline on your left, and you're here at like 3,000 feet or 4,000 feet, and it's the most beautiful view. So, I think as we fly and stuff, you still have these views that capture you.
No matter how many times you do it. A great example is the shoreline here, like the South Beach shoreline.
Yeah.
I mean, I told banners there, I gave tours there. I grew up in that shoreline. Every time that I fly that shoreline, I'm like, this is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Like,
yeah.
and you always find something that you've never seen before. And
So,
it's like,
I think for pilots that watch this, I think that we all share that same feeling. Is that at moments we capture these moments sometimes in our brain, and it's a cruise along the Hudson to see the skyline of New York. It's a sunrise over the Atlantic. It's whatever it is, and it's beautiful. It's like,
it's funny because we're coming, we left Teterboro probably about the same time the sunset was, coming down. And I'm looking at my forward flight and beautiful sunset. And taking photos of the shore of the whole island and everything, all the lights lit up. And I'm looking at my forward flight and I see a TFR over Space Kennedy Center. And I click on there and I'm like, oh no, we're going to pass it. We're going to be an hour early. I'm like, if I would have known an hour early, what a better way to end this flight than to be flying right over the Space Center when they're launching a freaking rocket into the air.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, if I had the gas right now, I'd be pulling back.
Pull it back, slow it down.
Slow this thing back because we want to see this. I mean, can you imagine? I don't. Have you seen it yet? Have you seen it from the?
No, I've never really seen a good space launch.
I had one. I was leaving New York, and we were all kind of wondering, like, what in the world is this? We're looking at because it, you see TV and movies, right? You see it go up straight up into the sky, but it doesn't really do that. It kind of comes up in an angle, and we're coming down from New York, and I see this thing, like, looks like a freaking missile, like was launched, right? Because it's very, very like parallel to the Earth.
Yeah.
On the departure angle, I guess. At least that's what it looked like from our peripheral.
Yeah.
And I'm like, curiosity killed the cat, right? I'm like, Senator, this is Spirit Boat. What's that target at 11 o'clock? It looks like fast and high. He goes, I got nothing up in my scope. I'm like, it looks like maybe a space vehicle launch. No, we have no notification of that. And we're all like, and then you hear the other pilots, everybody's looking out the window wondering the same thing. They're like, what is this? And they're like, yeah, we don't see it either on our scope. It's not painting anything else. And everybody's wondering it. And the guy goes like, stand by. He's calling, what in the world is this in our airspace? Because it looked like it was so close to us. Yeah. Like we could have, it looked like it was something in our area, right? And this controller's like, nobody's warned me about this. Like, what is something flying through my... So I'm sure the phone calls went down all the way in the chain of command. Like, what do we have in the airspace that we don't know what's talking about?
Yeah, what are they talking about?
And then finally they came back and said, hey, no, it's a launch from South Florida. And I'm like, man, from South Florida now up here. It was amazing.
Wow. So bright.
Yeah. Any other cool things? Any weird stuff coming over the Atlantic?
No, I've never been picked up by a UFO. And I get asked that more than you can believe. But no, it's just I've had a great life.
I don't know if you saw this, but there was never picked up by a UFO.
Yeah.
There was an interview of a Navy guy, I think, recently, a Navy fighter pilot that they've been seeing stuff and picking up stuff, and even the Navy admitted, it's like, listen, we have these targets and we don't know what these targets are. I think they upgraded the radar on their airplanes, and they were out there like, what is all this stuff?
If you really put it all in perspective, and you go back to the 50s, the Skunk Works designed the SR-71 in the 50s. Insane technology. 60+ thousand feet, Mach 3, built out of titanium. I mean, the technology they had back then was just stunning. The 60s, we saw more evolutions of things like that. In Desert Storm, we saw the unveiling of the F-117 that had been kept under wraps for all these years. So, I really feel in my heart there's all these black programs that both manufacturers and the government have that they're not trying to share with people. They really don't want to bring it out because we don't want to give it to China or Russia or whoever. And, I think there's technology out there that is pretty cool.
I agree with you. I think everybody's all excited about, aliens. But to me, I think it's more either, hopefully, it's ours and not another countries that they developed this stuff and we don't even know about it. And we think that they're UFOs. But if you again, the same thing that you're talking about, it when you look at the trajectory of our technology advancements, it it almost looks like we stopped really growing. And it's like, did we stop growing, or is it something that we just don't know?
Or are we hiding it better?
Or we're hiding it better.
And if you just took a line, if you just took a technology line and said, okay, let's start in 1962 with the SR-71, let's just draw a straight line out here. Look where you'd be right now.
Right.
50 years later, 60 years later, you're in a position where the technology is astronomical. So, I really feel in my heart that, and we've done stuff like we've flown air combat missions at night where we drop flares, decoy flares. Well, that's a pretty impressive thing to do too, but it lights up the sky in a bunch of different weird ways. So, I think there's also things that happen normally that people see that they don't quite understand or may not assimilate. But I just think the United States has always been a leader in technology. From the early space program all the way through. And I'm sure other countries do a great job too. But I think we built stuff that's pretty cool.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, that's my answer. Since I haven't been picked up by UFO, I can't verify that. But no, I think we do really well with technology. I think it's out there.
Dennis, what's the future look like for you? Are you going to continue flying?
Yeah, I'm having fun now.
Looking to buy an airplane at some point?
I had a Warrior not too long ago with a glass cockpit and stuff. Beautiful Garmin cockpit, beautiful Warrior. And I probably should have kept that. I really liked that airplane. But, it was convenient. It was easy. And, it burned 5 or 6 gallons of fuel an hour. And it was just fun. We'd go down to Key West a lot. My wife's from Key West. But, no, I'm really not too interested in owning. I enjoy flying. I enjoy the people I work with. So I do more of picking and choosing the owners of aircraft and the aircraft I want to fly. So, there's kind of it's nice to be in that position. And I like the team again, a lot of the owners I fly with are just wonderful, wonderful people, wonderful families.
It gives you a mission.
Yeah. And so, I feel like I'm taking care of them when we fly. And I enjoy the whole thing. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Dennis. It's been a great interview. I'm so glad to have you to share your story, and I'm excited for your Master Pilot Award. It's a Master Pilot Award. It's a Wright Brothers Award from the FAA. Congratulations again on receiving that award. I think you're very inspirational to any pilot, especially if they want to go down the military route or Delta route and international flying. Thank you so much for coming, Dennis.
Thank you, Felipe. I appreciate it.
And hopefully we get to fly sometime. I'm going to take you on the citation sometime. So you can show me a few tricks.
Yeah, we'll go. No, let's go play. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed the show. For more of our content, search on YouTube for Aviator Zone. If you know someone we should have on the show, please reach out at podcast@aviator.zone.